Hey guys, at 80s Jude over and share my first impressions of Halloween Kills, which was just released this weekend, simultaneously actually on Peacock and in theaters. And it's said that it's headed to over $50 million just on opening weekend, which is really incredible considering this is sort of like in the midst of, I want to say mid-COVID season, and there's not a lot of people, not as many people going to the theaters as there used to be, but certainly streaming online, and so this is really an incredible feat. I'm sure is just super pumped to see the film. But listen, diving into the film and spending the next several minutes talking about it, I want to let you know there's going to be some spoilers, so be aware of that. If you haven't seen the film, you may want to come back and watch this after you see the film, because I'm going to share some insights where I think, predictions that are going to happen in Halloween Ends, which is going to be released in 2022. So that being said, let me go ahead and just give you my impressions of the movie. First of all, I want to say that I didn't completely hate the film. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I still think that there were some really good highlights in it, and it is a viable film. It's a good film to see, especially if you're a fan of the Halloween franchise. Now, that said, I want to say and remind anyone that's listening that may be involved in the project in the future, or any horror projects, when you have main characters, you want to be able to use those characters and really develop them in such a strong way and utilize them actually in your stories. And I felt that the three main characters, besides Michael Myers, obviously, are Laurie Strode, which is played by Curtis, and Jamie Lee Curtis, and then her daughter Karen, who's played by Judy Greer, and her granddaughter Allyson, and that's played by Andi Matichak. And beyond the first act, you don't see too much of Laurie at all. Besides the hospital scenes, Jamie Lee Curtis's character Laurie is just, she doesn't even encounter Michael in the entire film, which is to me like a travesty if you're writing Halloween and Laurie is still alive. She's basically stuck in the hospital the entire movie, and doesn't encounter Michael at all. And whereas all these other tertiary characters are encountering Michael, and really Karen and Allyson, they don't do much until really the final act, and that was a big problem for me that I had in the film. But I think that there are some setups that are happening here for the next film, so I'm going to reserve my full judgment on that and really try to treat it as like a, obviously in parts, because when we see the three characters, they're actually leaving in the back of a truck, like we saw in the previous Halloween, and this is really a direct continuation. This scene takes place right after the last film, and where they left Michael in the house. I'm going to reserve my full judgment until I see Halloween Ends. But that said, I wanted to share that. That was one of my biggest issues. Now let's talk about what I really loved about the film. I really enjoyed the flashbacks and really the deeper insights we got from Officer Hawkins, who shares basically some scenes in the hospital with Laurie. And that's played by Will Patton, and I'm a huge fan of Will Patton. I think he's fantastic. But Officer Hawk shares some historical knowledge with the audience, as we're watching it. But that said, even though there were those highlights that I really enjoyed with the flashback scenes, if I could be critical for just a moment, I just want to say, if you saw the film, how is it that he gets carted into the same room as Laurie in the first place? Isn't that kind of strange? I know for a fact that when law enforcement is, it's getting anyone injured is being picked up through emergency services and brought back to a hospital, they're really separated from the general public, and they don't share rooms with general victims or whatever, because there's possibilities of being questioned, and there's prioritization with privacy with law enforcement. So I just thought that was really out of place and written in there just to basically share the same room and be able to share the story with Laurie. So I really had a problem with that. But again, that's a nuanced thing, and I just thought I'd share that. Obviously, I thought it kind of bothered me. All right, so It sounds like I'm hating a lot of things about the film, but I'm really not. But this topic, this segment, is going to be about something I really hated about the film, which is pretty much the entire hospital scene. To me, the hospital mop scene with Tommy Doyle, played by the legendary Anthony Michael Hall, that whole scene is completely gratuitous. It's unnecessary, and really, having the crazy guy being chased around by the mob because everyone thought that he was Michael Myers, to me, was just really, it wasn't necessary. That whole scene could be removed from the film, and it would make the film actually, I think, better. and I believe it was like really written there so the audience could see Laurie, could see more of Jamie Lee Curtis in the film, and being involved in some sort of activity or some sort of action, and including her in the film. Otherwise, if you don't have the hospital scene, she's basically not in the movie, except for the beginning and a little bit of the end. And I really just think that they missed a really huge opportunity to use the hospital setting for something really important, or to tell, a better story in that segment, in that section of the film. Now that leads me to some predictions. All right, so hear me out here. I think Halloween Ends is going to really, piece some of these things, some of these issues I have together, and maybe you have. And that's obviously set to release next year in 2022. But I really believe Michael is going to return to the hospital. And we're going to see a good portion of that film take place in that setting. Because like I said, and if you remember, the hospital plays a very important role historically for Laurie and Michael. And I think really the final showdown in Halloween Ends, and the hospital's gonna play a really important role in that. All right, let me know if you agree. If you guys agree, let me know in the comments below. Okay. Now, I also want to say something in the film. It sort of stood out to me, and I wanted to throw this out there because I really think that I might have stumbled on an insight here, because my gut feelings, they just tell me this scene was sort of out of character. There's something sort of important about the scene that we should recognize or take away. And let me know if you agree, okay? Did any of you think that the scene at the park with Lindsay's character, and Lindsay's character is played by Kylie Richards, that whole scene was really weird. I mean, her character is pretty important, and if you recall, she was one of the two children Laurie Strode babysat the night Michael Myers was killing everyone in the original film, in 1978, in the first Halloween. And that scene at the park where she's hiding from Michael, she hides right at the sort of at the creek bank, and Michael's following her. That whole scene, it stood out to me, I should say. First off, I don't think Michael returned and placed the bodies on the merry-go-round and hung Marion's body on the swing. If you recall that, she had the witch's mask, and then the other two bodies of the doctor and the nurse, the married couple, they were splayed out basically on the merry-go-round, wearing the skeleton mask and the pumpkin mask, and those were from the film Halloween Season of the Witch. But that scene just doesn't seem right, because when he goes over the bridge, and he's kind of looking for Lindsay, he kind of walks away from the park. So I really felt like he would not have returned and took the time to spread the candy all over the place on the merry-go-round and place the bodies the way they were and hang Marion on the swing with the witch's mask. That doesn't seem like something Michael Myers would do. That he would take the time to return and do that, especially after walking over the bridge and away from where Lindsay and where the park was. So I don't know what you guys think of that scene, but I feel like she had something to do with the way those bodies were laid out and the way that whole scene took place. Okay, maybe they're trying to sort of divert us from Lindsay and her role, in the film, in Halloween Ends. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you and get your thoughts. All right, so make sure you comment below and let me know what you think. Am I totally out of my mind, or do you think that she's going to play an important role in the next film? Okay. All right, and finally, I just want to say that I really thought that Lonnie Elam, and that character's played by Robert Longstreet, which is an absolute genius as an actor. I don't know if you guys were able to see Midnight Mass yet on Netflix, but he's just phenomenal there. But in Halloween Kills, he's really just sort of like, besides the kid that plays Lonnie and him as an adult, I really felt like an opportunity was missed with his character and also his son, Cameron Elam, who was also killed there at the end of the film. Played by Dylan Arnold, by the way, who's really, really a great young actor. But I really thought they were going to have far more important roles. And I felt the same way about Anthony Michael Hall's character, Tommy Doyle. I really liked him, but I thought that he was definitely used in such a way that was maybe not in the best interest of the film, and there was a missed opportunity there with the way his life, his encounter with Michael there at the end. And look, finally, I want to say I don't want to poo-poo the film. It's definitely still enjoyable if you're a Halloween franchise fan like I am, but it's certainly hard not to look at these films and wonder where some of the original luster went, right? And there's barely any psychological terror now, and it's been replaced with more like gore and gratuitous violence, it seems. All I'm going to say really is, that the original Halloween, which is still the best film in the franchise, by the way, there was no blood used. If you go back and watch the movie, you didn't see blood, right? Because it was based on psychological fear and what the audience could think through and play out in their mind. And we really feared Michael in the early films. Now there's so much blood, and Michael is more like a scary murderer. And he's always been a favorite of mine in horror films because he was just very mysterious. Michael was always a favorite because of the way he was written. But much in the vein of the other horror films, he just becomes this scary murderer. And less a horrific and mysterious boogeyman, which is what we were used to, and which is what makes him so terrifying in the first place. All right, guys, listen, I really appreciate you watching this, and please let me know if you agree. If you disagree, let me know in the comments. And hoping, fingers crossed, Halloween Ends is a much better film. Maybe it ties a lot of this stuff together, and we can look back at this film and just really appreciate it much more. All right, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned. I'll have a lot more of these coming up in the near future, all right? Stay rad.